Hey, Scotty. Jesus, man.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It Came From the Page. And this is my wrap up for everything I read in week 2 of the Summer Slasher Month. Being hosted by Kelsey from Slime and Slashers, where we are watching a number of slasher movies and reading a number of slasher books. I'll start off with the books. I didn't actually get too many books read. There was one that I was kind of started on, and I just didn't quite get through it, but I assure you, this is a much more happy episode than it was last week. But alas, there is one book that I just did not like very much, and if you couldn't tell from the intro, yes, it was Dean Koontz's The Funhouse. I said I was reading this last week, and I hated this book. I love the movie. Dean Koontz's novelization is pretty terrible. They do so much exposition and backstory to an event that's supposed to kind of just be a normal, like, these random kids get caught up in, like, a carnival gone wrong. And in this one, he adds Jesus and God and so much religion talk in this novelization. And I'm like, I am just here to read about slashing and gore and fun stuff like the movie. What is great about Tobe Hooper's Funhouse, the movie, is that it's just a bunch of kids who just get caught up in something that they don't understand and they're now in danger. And there's nothing to that says this is destiny. And you might laugh when I say that. Literally, that's a point, and the purpose of this book is that the meeting between the kids, and especially the girl and the evil villain in the Funhouse, is destiny. And literally, there's a scene in the movie where you first see what's supposed to be like the main killer's brother, and it's like this baby who has had deformities, but the baby is in like a thing of formaldehyde and is in like a jar, and it's supposed to be like an attraction. And at one point, the characters, they see that. In the book, that's literally a relative of hers, because her mother birthed that creature and then murdered him. So it's destiny that she goes back and finishes the job with the other child. And you're like, oh, this is weird, because it starts out where it's about the birth, and you think it's the birth of the main killer in the movie, but no, it's the birth of the child that you see in the jar. And the Funhouse already has a little bit iffiness as far as like how it treats deformities, and everything like that. But I think that there is a very specific reason why in the movie, and in the book as well, but in the movie, Tobe Hooper's movie, there is a element of Frankenstein in there, because the killer starts out in a Frankenstein mask. And I think that's more talking about how this is more like nature versus nurture. This is not like you're deformed and you're evil kind of thing. It was just everyone treated this person bad, and then they became like a villain, like in most traditional Frankenstein narratives. Again, there's still issues with that, as far as just like people with deformities are just normal people, and they are not the ones committing these crimes. Almost always, it's the pretty boys committing the crimes. But anyways, and this book immediately starts off with a grossness, in that the baby is born evil, and that these babies are born evil, and you're like, oh, this is not good. I don't like this. This is not very good. It gets a lot of very gross religion things. And it just keeps going in more weird ways. Like, I was listening to the audiobook of this, and I basically was just going at 2 times speed. Because it was just like, yeah, we get it. You're doing a religious sermon. Okay, come on, Dean Koontz. Let's get to the actual plot of the movie. And, like, the movie and everything that happens in the movie is, like, maybe this much of the book. And this is all about the fact that the lady's mom, the main character's mom, became a religious nut after murdering this child, and she felt really bad. But also, she didn't feel bad because that wasn't a normal child. That was the devil's spawn. And you're like, what? What is happening? And if you've seen the movie, you're like, what? Anyways, no thank you, Dean Koontz. Are all Dean Koontz this weird and religious? Or is this just because this was originally published under Owen West? So he published this under a pseudonym. And I just thought this was a really, really terrible novelization. To me, it felt like I was going and listening to a sermon by a drunk and randy preacher. Also, there's a fair bit of sexual assault in this book. Just be aware, because it's kind of hinted at in the movie. Well, not it's pretty directly said in the movie that there is a sexual element to the violence of the killer, but because it's a film, they kind of cut around it and they just kind of make that part of the story and want to talk about that. Well, you get it in very grisly, gory detail in here, and it just says like, ugh, not fun. Obviously, just be warned going in if you want to waste your time and read this book. So, are all Dean Koontz books this terrible? Let me know if Dean Koontz has ever wrote a good book, because I don't know. I don't think he does. But I promise you, that is the meanest thing I'm going to say all episode. Because now we're on to books that I actually really liked. So I read a novella. I guess you'd call it a novella. You could almost call it a short story. It's really hard to say. But it was published on its own, so I might as well call it a novella. And this is 20th Anniversary Screening by Jeff Strand. And this is just a very, very fun, very creative way to tell a slasher tale, in that the entire way that this is constructed is it's basically like you are reading an article someone wrote on like an independent horror blog about a movie and about what has happened as a result of the movie. So basically there's this really terrible slasher movie made called The Roofer, and in one of the screenings, the very first time it was screened, someone got murdered, and then this is dealing with the 20th anniversary of that. And in the 20th anniversary screening, when they do a revival screening, there's some slashing that happens. And let me tell you, I don't want to talk too much more about this, because I was surprised. And I didn't think that because the way it's written, it's like you're reading an article. Very rarely do you read an article and go, huh? And like be like surprised and shocked. And no, there was like some shocking moments in this. And what happens is pretty great. Like, I had a great time with this. It reminded me a lot, because I used to do a lot of articles for various horror websites. First off, this blog is better maintained than the Bloody Disgusting website, because that website does not moderate any of its comments, and that's pretty bad of that website. So I never visit that site, because it's a booking cesspool for the worst people in horror. But I used to write for a number of blogs, and I used to write about horror movies for blogs, and I used to like continuously try and find more and more obscure, weird things to write in depth on. And it was one of the first times where, reading a book, I was like, oh, I could have written this book. Like, I think I could have written a book like this and using this idea. Now, I don't know if I could write a better book than this, because this is quite good. And this is written by Jeff Strand, who was the co-writer when I was talking about the Haunted Forest Tour a few weeks back. So I think I like Jeff Strand. So I would be interested to explore more of his things. And if you're into just like a quick slasher read that has a very unique storytelling style, I would definitely recommend this. I had a great time with this. The other full book I read is another book by an author whose work I've previously read and enjoyed. And this is Sergio Gomez. And he is a Mexican-American author. And last Christmas, I read his Christmas novella called The Visitor. And I loved it. I had such a great time with it. So when I picked this one up, I was pretty excited. And this is Camp Slaughter, and it was so much fun. This is such a fun book. I had an absolutely great time with it. I really just like the way that Gomez writes his characters, and all of his characters are just immediately kind of likable and interesting, and you want to follow them. And the way this the way that this plays out is like very much like oh, I thought this was the main character. Oh, is that the main character? Oh, okay. So you really don't know where this is going. The main killer it's definitely like you got like Jason and Leatherface vibes, but it's like pretty much like doing a like a Mexican slasher villain. In that Gomez is using the luchador and luchador phenomenon that is huge in Mexico, and there was a number of great films that are directly referenced in this, which is like El Santo and The Blue Demon and other types of in the 60s and 70s. I'm not sure how far it went, but there was a number of really fun luchador movies that were made in Mexico, and it was taking some of that iconography and incorporating it into a slasher villain, and it was really good. I really liked it. This is a mean slasher, but it's like pretty well written. It's pretty bleak too. I didn't find this overly scary, but I a lot of what I was reading online, people did find it pretty scary. This book is kind of like I found it pretty funny in a lot of ways, and it's like pretty cheeky in the ways that like characters interact and what they do. I saw there was one person who on Goodreads DNF'd it because there was a comment about what they perceived as like being like anti asexuals, and when I read that comment, I read it as like, oh no, Gomez is introducing a character who is asexual, and that character has no hints of sexuality at all. And this is like a dumb white lady who who thinks that it would be crazy and weird for an asexual to exist, but really it's normal. And I just thought that was like a cheeky way of Gomez being like, yeah, no, like this person is kind of an idiot. You don't need to like. And I didn't perceive that as like that being from the author saying that. So yeah, sometimes when you get into writing characters that are a bit unseemly, and a lot of these characters are a little bit unlikable, like they're not doing a full amount of effort to make them super duper likable. And sometimes when they say something that's like, you can be like, oh, that's pretty offensive. And you're like, yeah, like if someone told me that, I'd be like, no, that's offensive. You can't say that. But when you're writing from the perspective of somebody who's not like an enlightened person, I sometimes that can get you in hot water, because sometimes I think people try to figure out what is the author saying versus what is the character saying, and I can see how that would kind of be like a point of contention at the very least to talk about. But I didn't interpret it that way. If you did, let me know. I 100%. If you read that part and you thought like, oh, that was pretty bad, let me know, because like again, I am by no means like an expert on this, and one of the things that's most valuable is to listen. So if that rubbed you the wrong way, I would love to hear it. But as a whole, I just really, really like this book. There is a hilarious scene regarding jerky, and that's all I say. It is also pretty disturbing. It's pretty mean-spirited, but it's also fun. It's really hard to say. It's very funny reading this book. I guess this is what I wanted The Summer Has Ended and We Are Not Yet Saved to be, because this is like mean and grimy and gross, but it seems to be more well written and more interesting, and you get into the antagonist's perspective a lot more, and you can kind of understand, not emphasize, but you can understand how things are happening and what's all kind of going in and out. This is a slasher book, and this is like a slasher movie in book form, I would say. So like the main kids are not like the most super duper well-rounded, and you don't really get to explore all their backstories and everything like that. But as a whole, I did think that it was quite good. So I really did enjoy Camp Slaughter. So I was having a great time with that. So hopefully after a few duds, I'm in a golden era for slasher books. As for slasher movies, I did get quite a few slasher movies in this week. Graduation Day, which is a early slasher from 1981. Now, I watched this because Kelsey from Slab and Slashers was like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch this," and this is like because like Andrew like pointed it out in his like video about Vinegar Syndrome, and I was like, I better rewatch Graduation Day to make sure that I am not gonna regret leading someone to that. And thank goodness my memory is correct. Graduation Day is quite a lovely and ridiculous and very cheesy slasher film with some amazing kills that are like super cheesy, and like honestly, if you haven't seen Graduation Day and you just want to have a good time, 100% watch it. It's very fun. It's very silly. It's one of those it's a slasher movie, and it's just a kind of an easy to watch, very fun, enjoyable slasher movie. Next up, here's some movies that I do not technically know if you'd really call them slashers, because they're kind of slashery, but not fully slashery. And I might as well do this in a twofer, because these are two Nightmare on Elm Street, basically ripoffs. One is from Mexico, called Don't Panic, from 1988. This one is very, very fun. This is a really fun film. I had a great time with it. I had watched this one before, but rewatching it, I was like, oh yeah, this is a fun watch. Again, nothing too crazy. I just had a good time with it. I thought the characters were all fun. Kills are fun. When you're doing a slasher review, you're like, some people can get in the weeds and talk all this stuff, and they're like, well, really, you come here for this, and this. The other one, also from 1988, Bad Dreams, which is almost like a Dream Warriors ripoff. The lead actress is actually the actress who plays Taryn in Dream Warriors, so seeing her again in a hospital setting was fun. I love this one. This one is so good. I've always loved the setting of using a hospital for a slasher or like anything like that, because there's just a different level when you're dealing with a hospital. Maybe for me specifically, it's probably because the last 2 years I've spent a lot of time in the hospital, so it's more interesting to see a horror story set in the hospital. I just love. Also, what's nice about Bad Dreams, it's in like a psychiatric hospital, so there is just a very big barrage of characters, all different age ranges, and I just had a lot of fun with this one. This is my second watch of this one. It's not really a slasher. It's kind of a slasher. It's like borderline slasher, but I think it's worth watching if you've never seen it. It's basically like this lady is part of a cult, and the cult does like a mass suicide, and she survives the mass suicide, and she goes into a coma for like, I believe it's like 13 years. So that she gets out of the coma, and then it's like her trying to like get back into society, but the main cult leader like comes back from the grave, quote unquote, and it's like all burnt up, like, and is like, come kill yourself, blah 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 blah, then we can all be at peace, blah blah blah. Anyways, that's fun. It's fun. I had a good time with it. And there are some scenes in this where I go, ugh, oof, ouch, ouchies, oof. Might as well transition right into Visiting Hours, which is a hospital slasher movie. Now, Visiting Hours from 1982 is oof. It's a tougher one to watch because it's actually like about something. A lot of times, like, I love slasher movies, but they're mostly kind of like survival fantasies, like I was talking about last week, where they're just about normal people surviving. This one, Visiting Hours, it's all about violence against women, and it's very pointed and very deliberate, and is wanting to talk about that. And if you've lived in the modern era, like, it's pretty sad that like the way that things have gone have not really changed that much in terms of. This is all about a lonely, disaffected man played brilliantly by Michael Ironside. and he is targeting this reporter who is like an avowed feminist and like is willing to talk about women's issues and is like talking about a domestic abuse trial that's going on where she is on the side of the person who was abused, who is the woman, and like he just gets seethingly angry about it. And there are some flashbacks to like his childhood, and you're like, oof, oof, yoy, yoy, yoy. There's some dark stuff going on in this movie, and it's pretty well done. And it's one of those movies where you like all of the characters, you other than Michael Ironside, but you really do like the main character, the main character played by Lee Grant, who is this like reporter who like gets attacked at the beginning and then she's in a hospital for the rest of the movie, recovering from that attack and then like getting better and everything like that. I just think this is a movie that like it's not perfect. Like I don't think it nails like everything in regards of like just filmmaking style, but I do think there's some really, really good performances in this. I think it's about something. It's a consecrated view about violence against women, and it's one of those things where it's like people, when they were criticizing slashers of the era, they would always talk about, oh, it's mindless, it's misogynist, it's blah, 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 blah. And this is a movie about all of that, right? It's about misogyny. It's about this, like, hateful dude. And it is really well acted. I think some of the reasons why the performance is so good is that Michael Ironside had a tough childhood. And there were some instances of abuse that he suffered. So I think there is a pretty powerful level to this film just on that regard. So Visiting Hours, not a very fun film, but I think is a quite important film to just talk about. And it is a good film to kind of be aware of in the legacy of 80s slashers, as it is about something. And it's not fun to watch. I don't think you'd have fun watching this, so I can see why this one hasn't aged as well as some of the others, in that people don't want to always talk about this topic, but, like, it literally, if this was made in the modern day, like, Michael Ironside would have been on Reddit. Like, it's like it was bad. It was like, oh, God, I should not be, like, watching a movie in the 80s and being like, oh, my goodness. Also, William Shatner's in this, and he eats yogurt. Less serious, but still fun. Jason X. I rewatched Jason X. I rewatched Jason X with a commentary because ages ago I had written an article about how funny the commentary was because it seemed like the director and the writer hated each other. Re-listening to it, I think I misjudged the tone and they're just friends ribbing each other. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think maybe that article, it was just me not reading a tone properly, so whoops. Sorry. They seem to actually be a little bit more closer than I originally thought. But Jason X, still a great time to watch, whether it's with commentary, whether without commentary. It's just dumb. It's just silly. It's just primo cheese. I love Jason X. It's also very Canadian. You can tell everything in it is super duper Canadian, including David Cronenberg appears in the opening scene, which is like, oh, hello, David Cronenberg, why are you here? And it's because the director and Cronenberg had worked together previously. So, anyways, one of my favorite discoveries, and this was a completely new movie to me, Open 24 Hours. This was a good movie. This is basically a woman gets released from prison after having set her boyfriend on fire. I didn't really think about it, but a lot of fire-related mishaps in my watch list this week. But anyways, don't know why that is. But she gets out of prison because she set her boyfriend on fire. And it was basically because her boyfriend was a serial killer, and she gets released, and so she gets a new job working at this 24-hour gas station, and she has had these kind of like hallucinations, and she's kind of not sure exactly what's real and what isn't real. And just from the very opening scene, I thought this was a very interesting character. I found her journey very empathetic. I was really into her journey. I really hope that everything worked out well for her and it was okay. Sometimes when you're doing this type of movie, there is that type of ending where it's like, oh, it was all in her head, she's the killer. And those endings fucking suck. And this was not that. So, I'm not going to say anything else about the endings and what happens. All I will say is she is not the killer, because nobody likes a movie where a woman is like hallucinating and then it's like, oh, she's been the killer the whole time. Well, I guess it's been done okay a few times, but I personally do not like that trope, because then it makes mentally ill people the villains, instead of most often mentally ill are the people who are more victims of crimes. They are not really the perpetrators. This is a pretty harrowing watch. I wouldn't say this is quote-unquote fun. I would say that this is a pretty serious, pretty spooky. I was legitimately creeped out by scenes in this movie, to a point where I was like picking up my cats, like, oh, is she gonna be okay? Oh no, you gotta come with me. Ah. So I would say Open 24 Hours is quite good. Two other movies I watched that I'm not sure if they count. Shakma is a terrible killer baboon movie, but the killer baboon is basically... The Killer Baboon is basically a slasher, but not really. And then I watched this fun dinosaur movie where two friends come across the dinosaur in a ghost town called Claw, and that was from last year, and I thought that was very enjoyable and very fun. I would say if you're going to watch Claw, the first thing you need to know is that if you don't like the main characters, shut off the movie. I liked the movie because I thought the main characters, which is like a comedian and like her gay best friend, who are like going down to LA, and they are stopped along the way as they're trying to like figure out how to get to her big show at the Laugh Factory. And I just found both of them super de-duper charming, and I enjoyed it all immensely. So Claw is good. It's a little bit more of an animal attacks movie, but like sometimes animal attack movies are kind of just slashers with animals. So I don't know. You could not categorize Shakma and Claw, but hey, I'm categorizing them now. What did you guys watch? What did you guys read? What are you guys looking forward to for the rest of Slasher Month? Okay, guys, have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.